All right, guys, I just want to welcome back to the Over the Coach Bowl podcast. Today, me and Nick here will be looking at the Birmingham Bowl being played on December 23rd, a Saturday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. Trojans are 7-point favorites live from Proactive Stadium. Looking at these offenses for Troy, this is a pretty good, well-balanced unit this year. Over 31 points per contest, led by a veteran quarterback and Gunnar Watson, who put up 3,300 plus yards, 27 touchdowns, and only 5 interceptions. He was certainly very particular with the football, being able to spread it around. Jabari Barber, 65 grabs for 892 yards. But Chris Lewis is the one that leads them in touchdowns with 10. He also got 735 yards, 23 yards per catch for him. And then Deshaun Stroudemeyer, 569 yards. And then they have another guy, Devontae Ross, 400 plus. I mean, this is a highly productive passing attack this season, Nick. And then you also want to throw in the 158 rushing per game, most of that coming from Kimani Vidal. What do you make of this passing attack this year that was quite successful?
This is an offense that is quite nice. They're really balanced. 267 yards per game through the air is a really solid number. 31.2 points per game is a number I'm very impressed in. 6.3 yards per play on offense is solid. 4.48 yards per play on the ground. 29 passing touchdowns to 5 interceptions ratio for this team is a fantastic number. Watson, he's the guy leading the way here, right? The 61% comp rate isn't fantastic. He isn't incredibly accurate at times, but 3,300 yards passing, 27 touchdowns, 5 picks is a really solid ratio. You listed off the names of the wide receivers. They got 4 guys with 400 plus that are all solid, and then Vidal, who is their leading rusher, is also involved in the passing game with 200 yards receiving and a score for him. Ethan Connor, in the limited appearances down the depth chart, he has 136 yards receiving and 4 scores. So this is a very balanced offense that has a bunch of different players. They hit you with. Vidal is really their big player on the backfield, right, with the 1,500 yards rushing, 5.7, and the 14 scores. This is a very balanced offense that continues to produce first downs. They get ahead of the chains very quickly. They're very solid in the red zone as well. 94% success rate in the red zone. This is a very solid team on offense that shows they put up 31.2 points per game.
41.5% third down conversion rate as well. But yeah, like you said, they got plenty of wide receivers, a very good running back, and the quarterback is continuing to progress. They also have a nice right guard, and Daniel King, who's been a phenomenal pass blocker this year. The rest of the offensive line, not as polished, but certainly hasn't been a liability of a unit by any means. You look at the Duke offense, this team was not really built to, withstand Riley Leonard going down. And their season fell apart once he did. They gave it to Grayson Loftus, his first career start against Wake Forest. He looked absolutely awful, but after that, he really looked like a normal football player. He was able to rip off 2+ passing touchdowns over the final 3 games. He had 3 picks, 823 yards, in those 4 games. So Loftus really found his edge there, only completing 53%. But I was very impressed, from where he was against Wake Forest to his last start against Pitt. I thought he looked like a much different passer. Was able to really distribute it well. Jordan Moore, Jalen Calhoun, appears both these guys will play. Those are the only 2 wide receivers they have, and that's what we talked about all the way back in, the summer, was how they only had these 2 guys. 642 and 4 scores for Calhoun, 794 and 8 touchdowns for the former quarterback Jordan Moore. Calhoun's had a lot of drops this year at times. For the senior, Nick, we saw that early on in the season where this guy was costing his team not just drops, but false starts, punt returns, whatever it may be. This is certainly an opportunity for him to go off a bang in his career. Obviously, their top running back is going to be in Jordan Waters, 753 and 12 touchdowns. That's a lot right there. That's obviously a lot of production they're losing of his entry into the transfer portal. Jaquez Moore, he did withdraw, but I'm pretty sure he was injured for the season. Actually, that was Jalen Coleman, rather, who was injured most of the part of the season. But Moore looks like he'll be playing 601 and 6 touchdowns. So they do still have that good running back right there. But Waters was a big-time playmaker for them, Nick, and they don't have him in this one. What do you make of this unit here? Graham Barton will be playing at tackle for them. But this offense really just seemed lagged without Riley Leonard. And it's probably going to be a struggle here against a good Troy defense.
Losing Riley Leonard was certainly a problem for this offense. 27.8 points per game, 4.94 yards per attempt on the ground, and 5.68 yards per play. I think the biggest and the most staggering statistic here is they have 14 touchdown completions and 7 interceptions. Of those 14 passing touchdowns, 12 of them were caught by Moore and Calhoun. Only 2 other players caught a touchdown pass. Jeremiah Hazley caught one. He only has 4 receptions, and Malik Wall caught one as well. He has 6 receptions. He missed some time. So it really is more in Calhoun. And Calhoun cost his team a lot earlier in the year. He had a ton of mistakes against Clemson, drops, false starts, like you said, just lining up wrong spots, lining up in the neutral zone, mistakes like that you really cannot expect to see out of a senior leader wide receiver there. He ended up with the 48 grabs, 642, 13.4, and 4 scores more. Has really been the lifeblood for this offense in terms of receiving passes, 794, 13.5, and 8 scores. Without their back, Waters, who they're losing, their leading rusher, that's 12 touchdowns off the board right there. Moore, he's going to have an increased load. I think Moore might have seen the writing on the wall, and once he heard that Waters into the portal, it might make sense that Moore kind of pulled his name out right now so they could go try and play this game and build up his stock with a new coach coming in here for Duke. Moore's got a great opportunity to show that he's a talented back that can lead this team through the future. Once they lost Leonard, though, it was basically, this offense was going upstream without a paddle. They were in a tough situation, certainly, and it shows by the stats.
The rest of this offensive line, plenty of veterans. It's a unit that certainly performed better this year. The interior, there's certainly some issues there, but they're pretty good in pass protection, so Loftus certainly has that going for him. Overall, I think Troy has a big edge on offense in this game. Those 2 pass catchers they have for Duke, they can certainly be a game changer, so that'll be something to monitor. Look at the Troy defense, Summerall before he left for Tulane. This is a defense that year after year just reigned terror on the Sun Belt Conference with their ability to, create negative plays and not give up a lot of points in these contests. Probably the best part of their unit is their ability to, shut down the run. This is a big part of their offense. They haven't allowed over 200 yards in a game once this season. They held Army to 0 rushing yards or 0 points, that is, and 175 rushing. A powerful Texas State offense, they only held to 13 points. They've really dominated much of this conference. They haven't lost a game since September 16th against James Madison. They lost that one to 2. And this defense has been a big reason why they've rarely faltered. It's led by some strong players up front. Javon Solomon, 17.5 TFL. Richard Gibnor, another 16 tackle for a loss. Jaden McDonald, his linebacking spot's been really good. This is a team that certainly maximizes its talent. McDonald leading the way with 75 tackles. Jordan Stringer, he's been a really sound linebacker for him this season. What do you make of this run defense, Nick? They're going against a team, the offensive line certainly performed better this season. But when you look at what this team in Troy has up front, especially a guy like TJ Jackson, they have a lot of great run stoppers here that figure to get great penetration all game long.
This is a fantastic defense here. When Troy lost its head coach, when Summerall took the opportunity at Tulane, the defensive coordinator, Greg Gaspartaro, has stepped up to be the interim head coach. He has preached a solid defense this year. It's his 1 year as defensive coordinator. He previously was at Louisville as their outside linebacker and safety coach, but he's had a solid defense this year. The stats are fantastic on this unit. I've been very pleased, 17.2 points per game, 3.1 yards per attempt on the ground, 74 yards per play, all really solid numbers. 9 interceptions to 13 touchdowns. When we talk about the secondary in a second, this front part of this defense, though, is a fantastic unit. Jaden McDonald leads the way in tackles with 75 total tackles, 9.5 tackles for loss, and a sack for him. Good numbers there. Javon Solomon, 52 total tackles, 17.5 tackles for loss, 16 sacks. 16 sacks is just a staggering number when you look at it. That's a really great number for a guy like Solomon, who's really making a name for himself at this level. Richard Jabano has 16 tackles for loss, 9 sacks, 53 total tackles as well. Jordan Stringer, 60 total tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks for him. So these guys spread the wealth. They're solid in the backfield. This front part of this defense are fantastic. Stringer, a great leader at linebacker with McDonald there. The two of them pair up pretty well together. They're a strong, nice unit. This is a great run defense. They get in the trenches quickly. 103.5 yards per game on the ground is a fantastic number. They're close to getting to below 100. This is a very physical unit that's in a good position here. Duke's going to have to run the ball a whole lot here. They're going to probably struggle to get success against this Troy running defense.
The secondary has also been very sound for Troy. They haven't allowed 300 yards in a game this season, 9 picks to 13 touchdowns. Some very good numbers they're putting up there. Certainly want to be able to see these corners, Reedy Stewart, O'Shai Fletcher. They're going to have some tough matchups against Moore and Calhoun. Other than that, though, I don't expect them to get burned by too many big plays. Keyshawn Swanson, he's been elite in coverage for them at safety. Dale Pettis, not as good, but he's also been very sound. Caleb Ransaw. There's some really good players. They coach this back end very well. They don't make too many mistakes. It's just very disciplined. Again, well coached. I think that certainly the ball production could be a little bit higher. That's not a problem by any means, especially when you have Roddy Stewart has 4 picks and 8 pass breakups. The rest of the unit certainly trying to catch up to his skills. but they're very good. I'm just kind of worried about those matchups on the outside because those are some talented receivers they're facing, especially on third down. They're probably going to win these matchups more often than not, especially with an inaccurate passer.
I think this is a good opportunity for the secondary to have a nice battle against a quarterback who's not super confident being thrust into the spotlight here. Del Pettis has not been incredible in coverage, but he still has 4 pass breakups, 73 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss. Irashad Davis, 63 total tackles, 6 pass breakups, 2 picks for him. Reddy Stewart, 46 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 4 picks, 8 pass breakups. Levon Fletcher, 48 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, an interception, and 5 pass breakups for him. Keyshawn Swanson, he is a tough matchup, but he's a solid player, 42 total tackles and 2 pass breakups. This is a unit that has some nice rotational ability here. I think this unit's deep enough to survive this game where it really is only 2 wide receivers you got to really put the defense on. Overall, I do like this Troy secondary. I think it's a solid unit. This Troy defense is fantastic. They're a physically strong unit, holding their opponents to under 20 points per game.
Look at the Blue Devil defense. Tyler Santucci, Mike Elko. Their unit really fell apart after Leonard went down in the second half of the season. They were outplaying Florida State and probably would have won that game if it wasn't for that injury. And after that, it just kind of fell apart for them as they were just not the same unit. All year long, though, they really struggled against the run. They're certainly worse in this area than I thought they would be, especially with who they had on their defensive line. Dwayne Carter is probably going to play in this game, but Anais Pebbles, R.J. Oben, 2 senior defensive linemen. They're not expected to play. They're in the transfer portal. Wesley Williams, a freshman. Anthony Nelson, a senior. Those guys are going to have to really step up and try to fill some of those run lanes. Their top linebacker, Trey Freeman, he's going to be playing 97 tackles. Dory Masai, though, his counterpart, not expected to, partake in this contest. Not all that worried as Nick Morris will certainly fill those shoes. So the 2 strong linebackers are going to be playing in this game. But the run defense has been incredibly vulnerable this year, Nick. It was kind of disappointing, and now it's only going to probably be worse against Vidal. Without your top players, it's probably going to be very hard for them to stifle the run. Obviously, last time out, they looked good against Pittsburgh. For the most part of the year, they were very vulnerable in the middle, and I think Troy's going to exploit that.
This is a defense that has been good against the run, but they are missing a lot of players. They looked vulnerable at times. And like I said, Troy has the opportunity to completely exploit that. 19.8 points per game, giving up a solid number below 23.93 yards per attempt on the ground. Another decent number there. I like that. 5.15 yards per play. So the secondary certainly has some improving to do at this point, in my opinion. They're not a bad unit with the 9 interceptions and 11 touchdowns given up. Right, the run defense has been good. 146.3 yards per game is solid. They have some good leaders on this side of the ball. Dwayne Carter playing is a big thing for this team. He's a really good player who didn't have the best season, right? 39 total tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 3 pass breakups for him. Good numbers, but you expected more at a guy like Carter, Anthony Nelson, Trey Freeman are all guys that are going to have to step up very quickly. Freeman leads the way in tackles for the team with 97, 5 tackles for loss, a pick, and 2 pass breakups. So he's been a pretty solid producer for this team. Outside of that, though, they're missing some talented pieces on this front part of this defense. They're going to have to find a way to step up if they want to be competitive in this bowl game.
I figured the secondary this year would take one more step forward and be amongst the nation's best. And they're really good for the first half of the year. The last month of the season, though, they were just no good at all. Again, it kind of coincides with that injury where everything just fell apart for this team. To 65% completion rating in those final 4 games, 70+% in 3 of them, 240+ yards in those games as well. And they gave up 6 touchdowns over the final 3, and they only got 11 all year long. The secondary just really fell apart, Nick. Obviously, they were playing North Carolina. Florida State really had their way with them, but they also got torched against Virginia, Pittsburgh. They were down to like a 3rd, 4th-string quarterback. He had no issues with them. So, Wake Forest as well. So this was very disappointing to see the secondary just kind of give up at the end of the year. Jalen Stinson, he's in the portal, isn't going to play. Jeremiah Lewis, they're glad to have him out there. There's some very talented players for the most part on this back end. Brandon Johnson's a phenomenal player. This is a secondary, though. Again, I was very disappointed. Al Blades had a good start to the season. Didn't end it very well. Joshua Pickett also. This is a very good secondary. I think they could have competed with anybody in the country. Florida State certainly did expose them in the production Troy's been able to have for the most part. Seems like they're going to have a feast here. Just kind of disappointing that the Leonard injury really just flipped the energy in this building for Duke, Nick.
It really has killed the energy, and it's terrible for a team that we had high hopes on. You and I were both very high on this team. They started off the season with a bang, beating Clemson to kick off the season. It's kind of just been downhill from there. This team has struggled in the secondary, and it's been disappointing. Like I said, the disparity between yards per play and rushing yards attempt basically means to me that the secondary is not doing their heavy lifting when those numbers are very far apart. I think Brandon Johnson's a good player, right? 56 total tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 4 pass breakups. Rivers and Lewis are both solid players. Rivers 53 total tackles, a pick, 4 pass breakups. Lewis has 50 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, a pick, and 4 pass breakups. AL Blades, he was solid, right? 42 total tackles, 10 pass breakups. Good numbers there. But this secondary just needs to improve in the offseason. They're losing some talented players to the portal. And for this game and this matchup against Troy, who has their offense pretty much set in stone from the entire season with no opt-outs or transfers, it's a tough matchup and certainly an uphill battle for this defense.
Yeah, I think it's still a great secondary. Just the last part of the year really struggled. Final thoughts on the prediction for Troy. You want to pressure a young quarterback without some key weapons. And obviously, as before, one of their top running backs withdrew from the portal. So they're really just down waters. For Duke, though, take risks. Go for it on fourth downs. Take shots. Send blitzes when you probably shouldn't. Fake punts, all that. I think you're going to see that. And I'd hopefully like to. I think the Blue Devils definitely need to make this one exciting in that way. Troy, even without their head coach, they're going to win this one handily, 35-17, probably even by more than that. I think Duke, their offense certainly showed some nice fight, though, at the end of the season, especially with Loftus, who's still playing for a future of his own, and so some of the other guys as well. So I think Troy's going to win this one handily. I think Duke will put up a bit of a fight. It's not going to be a complete 50-0 beatdown by any means, but I wouldn't be shocked if they win this game by 30.
This is a tale of two teams having two totally different seasons. Duke started out really hot. They beat Clemson week 1. They had some great wins. They were competitive with Notre Dame. They basically beat down a North Carolina State. They were in a great spot. Then that Riley Leonard injury really put a derail on this season. Their coach Bolts for Texas A&M takes a better opportunity. Just a complete fall apart disaster. You and I were high on Duke for very good reasons. As a team that looked like they were heading in the right direction under Elko. Just a sad way for the season to end. Then you look at Troy. Right, started off the season with 1-2 with a bad loss at Kansas State. Power 5 team though on the road, and then a close loss to James Madison. But then they've turned it around and just rattled off win after win. This team has been phenomenal in the second half of the season, picking up every single opportunity they have and winning their conference, beating App State at home. And now they got an opportunity to finish off the season with a 12-2 record, which would be a very respectable record for a program like Troy. I think they have a great opportunity here to do so. This defense is phenomenal. I love watching this team, and this is a really fun team that has a great opportunity to hire a new coach this season and continue to head in the right direction. Summerall was building something, but he bolts to Tulane, and now they got an opportunity to bring in a new coach and continue to build. This bowl game is a great opportunity. Should have a good crowd. Being in Birmingham, that's not that far from Troy, Alabama, so those fans should travel well. It's a gorgeous stadium. I've been there. UAB plays their home games there. This is a fun bowl game, kind of at the noon slate on Saturday. A good game to watch right before the holidays.
For today's episode, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.
A little bit of my soapbox at the fucking end there.